Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first official episode of Assassin's Read, our monthly Assassin's Creed book club. Now, before we dive into the discussion for Assassin's Creed Last Descendants, I just want to note that November's book to read is Alamut by Vladimir Bartol. Now, this is one of the books that was one of the inspirations for Assassin's Creed 1. It was written in 1938, and it's just very topical, and it's something that I've been wanting to read for a really long time. If you want to know where the origin of nothing is true, everything is permitted has come from, you'll definitely want to pick up this book and read it. Now, we've already done the giveaway for this book. Congratulations to the winners. The books are already on their way out. I am leaving tomorrow on a trip to Iceland, so pretty much right as soon as this video comes out, I'll be flying away, and so I wanted to get the giveaway done a little bit earlier, but definitely pick up a copy of Alamut if you haven't already. I'll have an Amazon affiliate link in the video description. As always, the affiliate links help fund future giveaways and the shipping for those giveaways. Really excited to read this one, so give yourself a lot of time to read it. Expect to spend at least twice as long on Alamut as you did on Last Descendants, and we'll have a discussion on December 1st. So with that said, happy November. How'd you guys do with Last Descendants? It's our first book of the book club. I want to say that I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool and actually a little different from what I expected. So based on the title and description of the book, I kind of expected it to be kind of singularly focused on Owen in the modern day and his ancestor in the past, especially because he has a hidden blade and his hoodie up in the cover of the book, and as far as I know, he never acquired a hidden blade in the modern day, so it was a little weird, but refreshing to find that there was this plethora of modern day and historical protagonists, and it allowed them to kind of do things with the Animus in a shared experience in a way that we haven't seen before. There's a little bit of something like that in Brahman really briefly, but it's only very briefly touched upon and not nearly in as severe a way as in this book. So I really liked having multiple protagonists. It gave the ability to explore different relationships. You see people kind of pairing off with Owen and Javier, kind of exploring a friendship and how that's impacted by a shared experience in the Animus. You have David and Grace representing kind of a sibling relationship. And then, of course, you have Sean and Natalia representing a romantic relationship. And all of these things are explored with how the bleeding effect kind of has an impact on them in the Animus. And so I thought that was really cool. I really liked the shifting points of view as it jumped around. It kept things kind of fresh and moving along. And I thought the Draft Riot historical setting, was actually pretty cool. I thought it was something I wasn't as familiar with, but it was really, it served the purpose of the plot, and it was really well described. So the other thing I liked is that there was a modern day, in contrast to some of the other books, especially the Oliver Bowden series, are basically all historical set books with no modern day at all. And I think a lot of what I love about this series is when you can take what happens in the past and apply it to the present day and see how that impacts people and your decision making with all the relationships that I mentioned earlier. It strikes me that this book is very much written for somebody who, well, not necessarily just for somebody who's new to the series, but definitely written for someone like that, in the sense that if you knew absolutely nothing about Assassin's Creed, there's actually quite a bit of exposition that needs to happen. And if you read something like the Oliver Bowden books, they don't really go into that. Or if you read into the comics, they don't really get into it as much. But there's basically three things that you need to describe when you're kind of laying out the lore of Assassin's Creed to someone who's new to the series. You need to talk about the Animus tech and the restrictions on how you can use the Animus, the Assassins versus Templar conflict, and then the final piece is the first civilization and how they fit into the story. And this book, I think, did a really, really great job explaining 1 and 2. Not so much the first civ, but I think that's totally fine. I think that's the way to do it. You bring the first civ in kind of gently. That's the way they did it in AC1 and AC2. You have just kind of hints of them, and that's how they'll be doing it in the movie from what we've heard from various articles. And so I think that's definitely the way to do it. And so I thought it was really, really well done. I think if you were a newcomer to this series, you could really just jump in here and have a complete understanding of how everything works in the Assassin's Creed world. Okay, so another topic I'd like to cover is the extrapolated memories. I really like the extrapolated memories. This is another brand new concept to the series. I like that it allows you to have a little bit more freedom in how you tell the story, but also in a sense, like it's also one of the only ways that you can have someone experience death. And of course we saw that with David and Abraham and his ancestor Abraham. um, so it gives you a little more narrative freedom. They explained it pretty well technically, and I also really kind of love, this is just a side note, I really love the idea of the Animus having to construct like these racist like simulations, because there's times when Abraham is away from everybody else and it's like, oh, you're in the extrapolated memory part of it, and like the Animus has to construct like all these kids who give Abraham like the side eye or like call him racist names, and I'm just kind of amused. I don't know, because I work in tech, and I just love the idea that the Animus had to come up with all these racist characters for its portrayal of this. It reminds me a lot of when earlier this year Microsoft released an AI Twitter bot. It's a great fan. They were so proud of it. They unleashed it on the masses, and within 24 hours, basically Twitter had taught the bot to spout like all this stuff about like Nazism and like all these really awful things. And so I think there's kind of a little bit of just funny parallels there that I really appreciated. So if we want to talk about each of the, you have basically kind of 6 modern day protagonists and 6 ancestors. I really enjoyed all of them. I thought they were really well done. If I had to pick a favorite, it'd be really hard for me to pick one. But there was something I wanted to talk about, and I thought was kind of interesting with Sean and Natalia. Okay, so bear with me here as I explain this kind of thing I've had on my mind a little bit. But I've always kind of thought that one of the things that people really like about these games, at least to some extent for some people, is the sense of escapism that you get from playing these games. And it's honestly kind of a little bit of a power fantasy, right? You put yourselves in the shoes of this assassin who is able to perform great physical feats and who has, principles. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of people like Ezio more than Connor is Ezio is very much the type of person that is perfect for this kind of fantasy. It's really nice to be able to imagine you're a Florentine noble. He has his way with the ladies, but he also has very strong principles, and he tries to do the right thing. Whereas I think a lot of the people that kind of enjoyed that aspect of Ezio also felt that Connor was kind of lacking in that sense. It's not as fun to imagine yourself in the shoes of someone of native descent necessarily, who are kind of oppressed in many ways, and also he's a virgin. He's has like no interaction with the ladies. He's also very naive in a lot of situations, and I think that kind of ruins the power fantasy that some people play these games for. And so it's always been kind of one of my theories that this is one of the reasons why some people like Ezio more than Connor. And obviously there's a whole bunch of other reasons that go into whether or not you like a character. I'm not saying this is the only one. I'm going to bring this back around to Last Descendants. The thing that I found really striking about Sean is it almost felt like a really extreme version of that. Not only has he lost his legs, and so the Animus gives him like even more of a power fantasy than necessarily like we do, because he can suddenly use his legs again. It also puts him in the shoes of one of the most powerful, like this big hulking guy who's but also kind of like a gentle giant, who happens to be able to kind of gain the affections of one of the most wealthy and talented and famous singers in the country and world. And not only that, but Sean experiences the Animus in a way that's way more immersive and intense than like we do playing the games, right? We're sitting with a controller in front of the TV. He's actually in the Animus. And until they release Assassin's Creed for VR, it's not really going to be the same. And so I just thought it was I really like the way that they explored Sean's experience in particular, because I think you could make an argument it's almost like an allegory for, like an extreme allegory for a gamer's relationship with the Assassin's Creed games, where you kind of have them in similar positions, and then he experiences the frustration of coming back to the real world and getting hit with reality, and that he cannot in fact save the girl that he has a crush on, and he's more or less helpless because of his injury. And he's still, a year or two out from that happening, and so it was really recent, and so he's still coming to terms with it. So I liked all of the stories, but Sean's kind of stuck with me, I think, a little more. I'd be curious to know if you guys felt the same way. I'm sure a lot of you had other opinions on whose story you enjoyed the most. Okay, sorry, moving on. Cudgel. I really enjoyed Cudgel Cormac. It was really cool. You know what I really appreciate about this particular reference to a previous Assassin's Creed protagonist is that it's not just kind of casual and doesn't really affect the story. It's actually like a really important plot point that Cudgel is from this line of assassin hunters. And it shows that Shay really left his mark on history, not just in his own actions, but in the actions of his descendants. And that they're not just referencing Shay just for fan service or for just a quick Easter egg. It's really crucial to the plot that there are these people out here who are actually trained to hunt down assassins. I thought that was really cool. Really happy to see Cudgel and the Cormac line continued. The one thing I would say about that is I really wanted just a little bit of fan service with a little bit of I make my own luck Easter egg somewhere, some slight reference to it. Doesn't have to be the exact words, but you know what I mean. I think that'd be hilarious if in addition to all these techniques that Shay passed down, he also passed down his philosophy on luck to his descendants. I think that'd be hilarious and a great nod to the fans, but that's fine. Okay, so with all that being said, I did have a couple quibbles with the story. There are a few things that I wasn't super crazy about. But just to remind you, though, like overall, I really enjoyed this book. One thing that I wasn't super crazy about was the Trident of Eden. This is, of course, one of the prongs of it is the main MacGuffin that they're trying to find throughout the story. The main problem I have with the Trident of Eden is I don't understand why the Trident exists in a world with apples of Eden. Because from my perspective, an apple of Eden is pretty much strictly better than the Trident of Eden. They say that the Trident has 3 prongs, right? One prong instills faith, one prong inspires devotion, and one prong inspires fear. Every single one of those prongs, as far as I can think of, would easily be covered by an apple of Eden. And in fact, the apple of Eden is used in history by rulers to subjugate the masses in a way that they describe the trident having been used in history. You know, it's very easy for the apple to conjure illusions to inspire fear if you need to, but just in general, the whole conceit of the apple is that it controls people's minds, and presumably in ways of faith and devotion. And honestly, between faith and devotion, I'm not sure exactly what the difference is between those 2 prongs. Faith and devotion go very much hand in hand, and I think we need more story for me to see. But as of right now, I don't understand how those 2 prongs are different, and I don't understand how those 3 prongs together are better than an apple or different from an apple. And so it was a little weird to me. It felt more like a plot device, like we need this piece of Eden that's split up into 3 different things. So maybe the trident was something that was created before the first Civ made apples. Like you could think of that as an explanation. And maybe they're looking for it in the future because they don't know where the apples are. And so they'll take a trident as kind of a, I don't know, like a secondary prize. I don't know. I wasn't super crazy about the trident in that aspect, in a world where apples exist. Otherwise, the trident worked fine. I'm honestly getting a little bit tired of every spin-off / transmedia project using the pieces of Eden as the only way to get back into the past and everything. I'd like to see something different done with the formula, but it's mainly about the trident compared to the apples. Okay, so another thing that I wasn't on board with is I think Eliza should have killed Cudgel. Remember, Eliza runs out of the house that she is staying in to chase after Various and Cudgel, saying, "This is the man who killed my father." She is really upset about it. She has him paralyzed, sitting over him with a piece of Eden, and she says, I quote, "She laid the blade against his throat, and his eyes blinked and opened wide. 'I will become an assassin,' she said, 'and you and I will meet again.' His eyes closed and lost consciousness. She rose and left him to dream of his failure." Now, I honestly don't know why she would rise and leave him to dream of failure. It's like, lady, you really just want to kill this guy right now. You've seen that he is extremely skilled. There is absolutely no reason for you to leave him alive. It just felt really, really against character. She is fresh off her dad dying. When people kill people like this, it's like in moments of passion usually. Like it's I don't understand why she would say, I'm going to do this later. It's like he is paralyzed, he is helpless, you should just do this now. I don't. And of course the real reason is, I think the real narrative reason she can't kill him is because then you wouldn't have it doesn't fit with how the Animus works, right? Because you know that Cudgel has to live longer in order to have a descendant that eventually leads to Javier, right? But that's contrived. And honestly, from what I had gained of Eliza, her personality and everything in the book, I have absolutely no reason to believe that she would ever do that instead of just killing him right away. It makes absolutely no sense to me. It says she left him to dream of his failure, but like I just don't buy that. It seems like a really weak kind of explanation. Now it's kind of unfortunate that everybody except for Abraham is guaranteed not to die, because you are experiencing these memories through the descendants, through the blood of the descendants, which guarantees that the descendant will never see their ancestor die. It's one of the rules of how the Animus works when you're viewing their memories that way, right? And so there's another moment, right, where Varius gets paralyzed by Cudgel, and Cudgel could have killed him, and later he regrets they didn't, but at least they did a better job of explaining that away. They say, it was a little bit of arrogance. He wanted the assassin to feel his failure, but also he wanted to have his name back out there. He wanted people to know that the Cormacs were still around and that they would be hunting assassins. I thought that was really well explained. I was hoping for something like that with Eliza, and Cudgel, I didn't get it. So that's one thing that I was not crazy about. Another similar plot point would be that I wasn't on board with was I don't think Monroe should have told all of the last descendants where the piece of Eden was hidden, that it was hidden at Grant's museum/cottage. That makes absolutely no sense to me, and here's the reason why. Early on, when he's talking to everybody, he says, you're being hunted by Abstergo right now, and Grace says, we're in danger right now. How do you know that this will make us safe? This meaning us going in and searching for the piece of Eden. Monroe says, quote, "It's safer than doing nothing," Monroe said. "If we find the piece of Eden first, and then I hide it, your genetic memories won't hold the answer anymore. They'll leave you alone." The idea being, if you don't know where this piece of Eden is, then Abstergo has no reason to come after you, and you'll be safer than you are right now, because right now it's in your blood. So why on earth then, after he finds out through Grace where this thing is, he gathers everybody around and he's like, "Hey guys, guess what? Piece of Eden's with Ulysses S. Grant in in like his cottage." Like, that goes absolutely 100% against what he said in the beginning, because really what he should have done, it's like, okay, you can't prevent Grace from knowing, because it's Grace's memories that lead to where the piece of Eden ends up, right? You can't prevent Grace from knowing, but you can prevent the 5 other kids from knowing where this piece of Eden ended up. And instead of having story time, he really should have just shut up and said, "I know where the piece of Eden is, I'm taking you home, and then I'm going to go out and get it." Now, of course, this is another case where the plot requires him to tell everybody else, so that when Owen and Javier get split up, and then they meet up with the assassin later, Griffin, they can go with Griffin to the point, and they couldn't to where the piece of Eden was, and they couldn't have done that unless Monroe had told them where the piece of Eden was hidden. And so it's just another point where, in order to advance the story forward, I felt like they did something that was against character. So that's another point that I wasn't crazy about, and wasn't really on board with the logic. One other thing is just kind of in this, in maybe a similar vein. This is more of a minor thing. It is really convenient to have 6 of these kids all from the same area, like local high schools and everything, all around the same age, that all happen to have like really important ancestors, and they all happen to intersect like so perfectly. I know that this is just part of how the story goes. It's almost too much for me to accept as coincidence. And it's possible that they could actually explain this away. They do repeatedly say this is an extraordinary coincidence that's only ever happened a few times. And they do reference the Ascendants event, which I assume that they will explain later on. So this could very easily be explained away in the future. at face value, it feels a little too convenient for me, but not quite enough to pull me out of the story. So that's just the final little minor thing, quibble I had with the book. So those are kind of the things I wasn't super crazy about. Like I said, overall I really enjoyed the story, and these other things are not enough to diminish how much I enjoyed the story or kind of diminish the strengths of the story. All right, before we end, one piece of trivia that you may or may not have noticed. I've seen at least a few people on Twitter who noticed this as well. I did an interview with Darby McDevitt, who wrote Assassin's Creed Revelations, Assassin's Creed 4, as well as some of the modern day and more recent games. And we talked about an idea that he had for a future modern day premise.
I had an idea a long time ago that nobody's taken up, but maybe one day. And my favorite idea for the present is to open with a bunch of kids breaking into Abstergo, and you're one of them. And it's just you happen to know a kid whose dad works at Abstergo, and they break in at night and with a couple 6-packs of beer, and they go on joy rides on the Animus. And so the idea would be that they just dial up random time periods, and go like, "Hey, I'm gonna go back into the Middle Ages, or I'm gonna go to this, then that, and this and that," and that would be the tutorial sections where they're just like, "Hey, I'm in the body of an acrobat in the 1860s at Barnum and Bailey's first circus." Or
Okay.
I don't know. Whenever that Barnum and Bailey's first was created, but
right.
and then you'd have this fun level that had nothing to do with anything, but it was joyriding in the Animus, and then at some point they stumble across an Assassin Templar conflict, and that's when the proper story begins.
Oh, interesting.
So you might note that this is actually fairly similar to what happens in the beginning of the novel when Owen first goes to Monroe, and he talks about how a lot of kids come just for kind of taking it as a joyride, but other people come there with more purposeful intent, like Owen and his father in the bank robbery. Now, it's not exactly the same as what Darby said. We have no idea. Darby doesn't know if they took the idea. He shared it around with some people, but it's also entirely possible and likely that somebody else just came up with a similar idea on its own. It's not exactly like something that's super out there. But I just thought it would be interesting to note for anybody who remembers that podcast. Okay, and that's going to do it from my side on the book. Overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I think it set the foundation for a series very well. We know that there's a book coming out in either January or February, another Last Descendants book, and then there's also a comic series that's going to be going on following some of these characters. So I would absolutely... we'll definitely put those on the list to read as they come out. I'll be really excited to dive back into this world. And despite a few misgivings, I thought it was a really great book. I had a really, really great time reading it. So, as for all of you, please leave in the comments any thoughts you had on the book. Did you like the book? Did you dislike it? What parts did you like and dislike? Who were your favorite ancestors? Who were your favorite descendants? Do you agree or disagree with a lot of the points that I made, or do you have any other points you want to make or thoughts you want to share? Let's have a discussion. I'll be out for a week in Iceland when this video goes up, but so I won't be as active as I normally would be in the comments, but I'll still try to make time here and there to reply and kind of participate in the discussion, of course. And in the future, we'll tie some of these comments to future giveaways for future books. Okay, so that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to pick up a copy of Alamut. There is a Amazon affiliate link in the video description. That is our November book to read. And so I will see you all on December 1st, where we'll talk about Alamut. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.